The old pickup truck's engine coughed and wheezed as Dehayan Washington pulled over to the side of Highway 9. The July heat was brutal, and his air conditioning had given up the ghost 3 counties back. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he grabbed his worn toolbox from the truck bed, the metal handle burning hot under the desert sun. That's when he saw it. The vehicle sitting on the shoulder ahead looked like nothing he'd ever seen in his 23 years of fixing everything from farm tractors to luxury cars. It was sleek and silver, almost liquid in appearance, with curves that seemed to flow rather than being welded together. No visible seams, no familiar lines of any manufacturer he knew. The thing looked more like a teardrop of mercury than a car. A man stood beside it, dressed in an expensive-looking grey suit despite the sweltering heat. He wasn't sweating at all, which struck Dehayan as odd. The stranger had East Asian features and carried himself with a strange formality, like he was uncomfortable with something as simple as standing on a roadside. "Engine trouble," Dehayan called out. Walking over with his toolbox clanking, the man turned, and his eyes held a peculiar intensity. "Yes, though I fear it may be beyond repair. I am Minho." His English was perfect, but carried an accent Dehayan couldn't quite place. "Dehayan Washington. Let me take a look." When Minho opened what appeared to be the hood, Dehayan's jaw dropped. The engine bay was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Instead of the familiar maze of hoses, belts, and metal blocks, there was something that looked almost organic. Crystalline structures pulsed with faint blue light, connected by what appeared to be veins of liquid silver. The whole thing hummed with a frequency he could feel in his bones. "What in the world?" Dehayan muttered, leaning closer. Steam was rising from a cluster of crystal formations that seemed to be overheating. The liquid silver connections were turning an angry red color, and the humming was becoming more erratic. "The cooling matrix has failed," Minho said quietly. "Without proper thermal regulation, the quantum drive will cease functioning." Dehayan nodded as if he understood. The quantum drive meant nothing to him, but overheating was overheating. Regardless of the technology, he could see that the crystalline structures were generating massive amounts of heat, and whatever cooling system they had wasn't working. "Your coolant lines are backed up," Dehayan observed, pointing to where the silver veins were glowing hot. "Something's blocking the flow." He studied the system for several minutes, ignoring Minho's increasingly worried glances down the empty highway. The crystals seemed to be the power source, generating energy that needed to be kept at specific temperatures. The silver veins were clearly some kind of coolant system, but there was a blockage where they connected to a larger crystalline hub. "I think I can fix this," Dehayan said, surprising himself. "But I'll need to improvise." He jogged back to his truck and grabbed his emergency supplies: a roll of copper wire, a bottle of radiator coolant, and his portable siphon pump. Back at the strange vehicle, he studied the problem again. The blockage seemed to be in a junction where 3 silver veins met. If he could bypass that section, working carefully, Dehayan began creating a bypass route using his copper wire. He fashioned a small bridge that connected 2 of the silver veins, allowing the coolant to flow around the blocked junction. The tricky part was figuring out how to introduce his Earth-made coolant into the alien system without causing more problems. Minho watched in fascination as Dehayan used his siphon pump to carefully extract some of the silver liquid from the system, then slowly introduced his own coolant mixture. The crystalline structures immediately began to dim their angry red glow. "Try it now," Dehayan said. Stepping back, Minho pressed his palm against what appeared to be a smooth section of the vehicle's surface. The engine bay filled with that strange humming again. But this time it was steady and musical, almost like A choir of electronic voices, the crystals pulsed with gentle blue light, and the silver veins flowed with their proper color once more. Remarkable, Minho said, staring at Daehyun with an expression of genuine awe. You diagnosed and repaired a quantum cooling matrix using primitive tools and intuitive reasoning. Just seemed like basic thermodynamics to me. Daehyun shrugged, wiping his hands on an old rag. Heat goes where it shouldn't. You find a way to move it where it should. Minho reached into his jacket and pulled out a small disc that looked like it was made of the same silver material as the vehicle's coolant veins. It was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse gently with its own inner light. Please, take this as payment for your assistance. Daehyun held up his hands. Hey man, I don't need payment. We all break down sometimes. Besides, that was actually kind of fun to figure out. Minho pressed the disc into Daehyun's palm anyway. Your kindness and skill will not be forgotten. Daehyun, Washington. I suspect we will meet again very soon. The strange man climbed into his vehicle, which sealed itself without any visible doors. The craft lifted silently from the ground, hovering for a moment before shooting into the sky faster than any aircraft Daehyun had ever seen, standing alone on the empty highway. Daehyun looked down at the silver disc in his palm, wondering what he'd just gotten himself into. Daehyun was halfway through his morning coffee when the sound hit him like a freight train. The deep thrum of helicopter rotors grew louder and louder until his entire trailer was shaking. Coffee sloshed out of his mug as he stumbled to the window, pulling back the faded curtains. A sleek black helicopter was descending directly toward the trailer park, its rotors whipping up a dust storm that sent trash cans rolling and laundry flying off clotheslines. Mrs. Rodriguez from Trailer 12 was standing in her doorway with her mouth hanging open, while old Pete was actually recording everything. With his phone, the aircraft touched down in the small clearing where the kids usually played basketball, its engines slowly winding down. This wasn't any military helicopter Daehyun had ever seen. The design was too smooth, too advanced, with no visible weapons or markings. It looked more like something from a science fiction movie. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and Minho stepped out, looking exactly as composed as he had on the highway yesterday. He was followed by a woman with striking Korean features wearing the same type of expensive gray suit. Behind them came two figures in pristine white uniforms that seemed to shimmer slightly in the morn. Ing-san. Well, I'll be damned, Daehyun muttered, setting down his coffee mug. He opened his trailer door just as Minho approached, flanked by his unusual companions. Up close, Daehyun could see that the woman's eyes held the same intense quality as Minho's, and the two figures in white uniforms moved with an eerily synchronized precision. Mr. Washington, Minho said with that same formal tone, I apologize for the dramatic rival, but time is of considerable importance. Yeah, well, you've definitely got the whole neighborhood's attention, Daehyun replied, gesturing at the growing crowd of curious trailer park residents gathering at a safe distance. The woman stepped forward with a gentle smile. I am so young. We represent an organization called the Galactic Confederation. The vehicle you repaired yesterday was not from your world. Daehyun blinked hard, wondering if he was still dreaming. Come again. The craft you fixed was a reconnaissance vessel, Minho explained. What you accomplished should have been impossible for someone from a pre-contact civilization. Your species isn't supposed to understand quantum drive technology for at least another 50 years. My species, Daehyun laughed nervously. Look, I just fixed an overheating engine. Granted, it was the weirdest engine I've ever seen. But still, So Young exchanged a meaningful glance with Minho. Mr. Washington, What you call an engine was actually a quantum tunneling drive capable of faster than light. Travel with a cooling matrix you repaired maintains the exotic matter containment field. Without it, the vessel would have exploded with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The words hit Daehyun like a physical blow. He grabbed the doorframe for support. Nuclear weapon. You not only prevented a catastrophic explosion, Minho continued, but you did so using primitive tools and pure intuitive reasoning. This kind of adaptive problem-solving is exactly what we've been searching for. One of the uniformed figures stepped forward and spoke in a voice that sounded oddly musical, almost like the humming from the alien engine. So Young nodded and turned back to Daehyun. J1 here is from a world called Kepler-4 to be. His people have been part of the Confederation for 300 years. He says your repair work was more elegant than solutions their best engineers would have devised. Daehyun looked at the figure in white more carefully. Now that he was paying attention, he could see that Jaewon's proportions were slightly off for a human. His fingers were longer, his eyes larger, and when he moved, it was with a fluid grace that seemed almost inhuman. Okay, Daehyun said slowly. Let's say I believe all this crazy talk about galactic confederations and alien worlds. What exactly do you need from me? We've been observing Earth for the past 50 years, So Young explained. Your planet is approaching a critical point in its development soon. You'll either achieve interstellar capability or destroy yourselves trying. The Confederation helps species make that transition safely, but only if they prove they're worthy, Minho added. We look for individuals who demonstrate the qualities necessary for peaceful coexistence among the stars: technical adaptability, moral integrity, and the ability to help others without expectation of reward. Yesterday, you helped to complete Stranger fix what you thought was just a broken-down car. So Young said warmly, you refused payment and went out of your way to solve a problem that wasn't your responsibility. The second uniformed figure spoke up in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. So Young listened carefully before translating. Doyun is from the Vega system. She says her people have a saying, the measure of a being is not in what they can gain, but in what they freely give. Your actions yesterday embodied that principle perfectly. Daehyun felt his knees getting weak. He sat down heavily on his trailer steps, trying to process everything he was hearing. So you're telling me I'm being recruited by space aliens because I helped fix a car? Not just any car, Minho smiled. A vehicle containing technology that could revolutionize your civilization, and you fixed it with copper wire and radiator fluid. The Confederation Council has authorized us to make you an offer, So Young said, producing a device that looked like a crystalline tablet. Images began flowing across its surface, vast space stations, cities floating among the stars. Beings from dozens of different worlds working together in harmony. Earth is being considered for membership in the Galactic Confederation, she continued. But first, we need to be certain that humanity is ready. We'd like you to participate in a series of evaluations alongside candidates from other worlds, think of it as a test, Minho added. Not a competition, but a collaborative assessment. If humanity proves itself worthy, your entire species will be invited to join the galactic community. Daehyun stared at the incredible images flowing across the crystal tablet, somewhere in the back of his mind. He was aware that his neighbors were still watching from their doorways, probably wondering why aliens had landed at the trailer park to talk to the unemployed mechanic. And if we're not ready, he asked quietly. So Young's expression grew serious. Then we'll return in a few decades and evaluate you again. But Mr. Washington, based on what we've observed, I believe humanity has tremendous potential. You just need the right representative to show the galaxy what your species is truly capable of." She handed him the crystal tablet, and as soon as his fingers touched it, the device began displaying information in perfect English. "The choice is yours," Minho said, "but I should mention that time is running short. The evaluation begins in 48 hours. The elevator descended for what felt like forever, passing level after level of the underground complex. Daehyun watched the numbers climb higher on the display. Level 47, level 52, level 61. His ears popped from the pressure change as they went deeper beneath the Nevada desert. "How far down does this place go?" he asked So Young, who stood calmly beside him as if riding elevators to the center of the Earth was perfectly normal. "The facility extends nearly 2 kilometers underground," she replied. "It was built using Confederation technology to remain undetected by your satellites and governments." When the doors finally opened, Daehyun stepped into a vast chamber that took his breath away. The ceiling stretched up at least 100 feet, supported by graceful arches that seemed to be grown rather than built. Soft blue light emanated from the walls themselves, and the air hummed with barely contained energy. But what really caught his attention were the other beings scattered throughout the space. Near a cluster of holographic displays, a tall figure with midnight blue skin was manipulating streams of light with graceful hand movements. The being stood nearly 8 feet tall, with elongated limbs and features that seemed almost elven. When it turned toward Daehyun, he could see large, luminous eyes that held ancient wisdom. "That's Hyenwu," Soyoung explained quietly. "His people, the Arcterians, can perceive electromagnetic fields the way you perceive colors. They've been part of the Confederation for over 1,000 years, across the chamber." Something that looked like a living crystal formation was communicating with a maintenance robot. The creature's body was composed of interconnected geometric shapes that shifted and pulsed with internal light. When it moved, it created haunting musical tones that seemed to resonate through the floor. "And that's Bora," So Young continued. "Her species evolved from silicon-based life forms on a world with extreme electromagnetic storms. They think in mathematical patterns and can interface directly with quantum computers." As they walked deeper into the facility, Daehyun saw more incredible beings. A creature that looked like it was made of flowing water moved past them, its form constantly shifting between solid and liquid states, near a wall of complex machinery. A being covered in what appeared to be living metal was working alongside to others that looked almost human, except for their silver-white hair and pale, luminous skin. 6 species in total, Soyoung explained, each chosen for their unique abilities and potential for cooperation. "The Confederation has learned that diversity of thought leads to the strongest solutions." They were led to a briefing area where the other candidates had gathered. Minho stood at the center, gesturing toward the massive holographic display that showed a detailed 3-dimensional model of what looked like a space station. "The Kepler station," Minho announced as Daehyun joined the group, "a critical communications hub that links 17 different star systems 3 days ago. It suffered a cascade failure that left it completely offline." The hologram zoomed in to show the station's internal structure. Daehyun could see that it was enormous, easily the size of a small city, with multiple rotating sections and complex arrays of equipment he couldn't even begin to identify. "Your task," So Jan added, "is to work together to diagnose and repair the station's primary systems. You'll have access to basic tools and diagnostic equipment, but nothing advanced enough to simply override the problems. You'll need to understand the underlying issues and develop creative solutions." Hyenwu, the blue-skinned Arcterian, spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes mixed with a symphony. The translation came through Daehyun's earpiece a moment later. The electromagnetic signatures are chaotic. Multiple system failures cascading through the network. Bora, the crystalline being, responded with a series of light patterns that danced across her geometric form. Her translated response was, quantum processing cores show signs of resonance instability. Primary matrix connection severed. Okay, Daehyun said, studying the holographic display. So we've got electrical problems and computer problems. What about the mechanical systems? Are the rotating sections still functioning? A being that looked almost human except for her silver hair stepped forward. I am Yunji of the Tau Ceti colonies. Our scans indicate that the station's gyroscopic stabilizers are operating at 60% efficiency. Structural integrity remains sound, but rotational balance is compromised. As the different species began analyzing their respective areas of expertise, Daehyun noticed something interesting. Each being naturally focused on the type of problem their species was best equipped to understand. The Arcturians immediately went to work on electromagnetic issues. The crystalline Bora interfaced with the quantum computers, and the Tausicians began calculating structural engineering solutions. But they weren't talking to each other. Hold up, Daehyun called out, getting everyone's attention. I think we're approaching this wrong. The other candidates turned to him with expressions ranging from curious to skeptical. He walked over to the holographic display and pointed at different sections of the station. Look, each of you is brilliant at what your species does best. But this station wasn't built by just one species, was it? It was designed by the Confederation, working together. That means all these systems are interconnected. He gestured to Hyun Woo. You can see the electromagnetic problems, but Bora can see how those problems are affecting the quantum processes. He turned to Yoonji. And you can see how the processor failures are throwing off the rotational balance. Bora's crystalline form began pulsing with brighter light patterns through the translator. She said, the human suggests a systems integration approach. Fascinating. Exactly. Daehyun continued, warming to his theme. We need to map out how all these failures are connected. I bet if we trace the cascade back to its source, we'll find that fixing one central problem will solve most of the others further. Next several hours, the diverse team worked like nothing Daehyun had ever experienced. Hyun-woo would sense an electromagnetic anomaly and point it out to Bora, who would trace its effects through the quantum processing network. When they found a computational bottleneck, Yoonji would calculate how that was affecting the station's structural systems. Daehyun found himself becoming the team's coordinator, translating between different ways of thinking and helping each species understand how their expertise connected to the others. His mechanical background helped him see the big picture of how all the station systems worked together. I think I've got it, he announced after hours of collaborative analysis. The cascade started when a power coupling failed in Section 7. But instead of just burning out, it created a feedback loop that's been spreading through the whole station. Bora's light patterns became excited. Yes. The quantum resonance is creating recursive errors in the processing matrix, and those errors are sending bad data to the gyroscopic controls. Yoonji added, the station is trying to compensate for problems that aren't real, which is creating real problems. Hyun-woo's musical voice carried a note of admiration. The human has identified the root cause. But how do we repair a power coupling on a station millions of kilometers away? Daehyun grinned. We don't repair it. We bypass it completely and reprogram the system to root around the damage. Bora, can your people's quantum interface create a virtual coupling to replace the physical one? Theoretically possible, Bora replied, her form now glowing with enthusiasm. But the calculations would be incredibly complex. Good thing we've got Yoonji's people to help with the math, Daehyun said. and Haiyan can monitor the electromagnetic fields to make sure our bypass doesn't create new problems. Working together with newfound synergy, the team implemented their solution. The holographic display showed the station systems slowly coming back online, section by section. As their integrated approach resolved years of accumulated problems, Minho watched from the observation deck, a smile spreading across his face. The human had done something remarkable. He'd turned 6 individual specialists into a unified team. The success of repairing the Kepler station had put everyone in high spirits. Haiyan was sharing a meal with his fellow candidates in the facility's common area when the first alarms started blaring. It was a low, pulsing tone that seemed to vibrate through the walls themselves. "Attention all personnel," came an automated voice over the intercom. "Minor atmospheric processing anomaly detected in Section C. Please remain calm while maintenance crews address the issue." Haiyan large eyes immediately dilated as he sensed something the others couldn't. His musical voice carried a note of concern. "The electromagnetic patterns are wrong. This is not minor." Bora's crystalline form began flickering with rapid light patterns, interfacing directly with the facility's computer systems, atmospheric processes showing cascade failures. Oxygen levels dropping in multiple sectors. That's when the second alarm joined the first, then a third, each one more urgent than the last. The soft blue lighting in the walls began to flicker. Haiyan could feel a change in the air pressure that made his ears pop. "Attention all personnel." The automated voice returned, now with an edge of urgency. "Critical system failures detected. Emergency protocols are now in effect. Please report to designated safe zones immediately." Round the common area, beings from different worlds began reacting in ways that revealed their true natures. The water-like creature that Haiyan had seen earlier immediately began flying toward what appeared to be a sealed containment unit, its form becoming more liquid as stress increased its need for protection. The Tausicians, including Yunji, clustered together and began rapidly calculating evacuation routes, their silver eyes glowing as they processed multiple scenarios simultaneously. The living metal being had already sealed itself inside what looked like a protective shell. "This is bad," Haiyan muttered, watching as his teammates from the station repair began separating along species lines. The cooperative spirit they'd built was evaporating faster than the facility's atmosphere. Haiyan was backing toward a wall, his blue skin now flickering with patterns of bioluminescence that Haiyan recognized as distress signal. The electromagnetic storm is interfering with my people's natural abilities. I cannot perceive the systems clearly." Bora had withdrawn into a tight geometric formation, her light patterns becoming erratic. "Quantum interference is disrupting my connection to the facility's computers. I cannot process the data streams." More alarms joined the cacophony, and now the lights were failing completely in some sections. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an ominous red glow. Through the facility's transparent aluminum windows, Haiyan could see automated systems outside beginning to shut down. "Emergency containment procedures activated," the voice announced. "Atmospheric breach detected in levels 45 through 52. All personnel must evacuate to level 60 immediately." That's when it hit Haiyan like a lightning bolt. The timing was too perfect. The failures too comprehensive. This wasn't an accident. "Hey," he shouted over the alarms, his voice cutting through the panic. "Everyone stop and listen to me." The various beings turned toward him, their alien expressions showing confusion and fear. Some were already moving toward emergency exits, following their species' natural survival instincts. "This is the real test," Haiyan continued, his voice carrying the authority he'd developed while coordinating the station repair. "Think about it. We just proved we could work together when everything was going well. Now they want to see what happens when everything goes wrong. Yunji paused in her rapid calculations. You believe this crisis is artificially generated? I'm sure of it, Daehyun replied. Look at the pattern of failures. It's too organized. To complete. Real emergencies are messier than this. Someone is controlling these systems, creating exactly the kind of situation that would make us retreat into our species groups. Bora's light pattern shifted to a more analytical frequency. Accessing emergency logs. Yes, the human is correct. These failures are being generated by the training system. But that does not make the danger less real. Exactly, Daehyun said, moving to the center of the group. The danger is real, but so is the solution. We solved the station problem by combining our abilities. This is just a bigger version of the same challenge. The facility shuddered round them. Daehyun could hear the distant sound of bulkheads sealing automatically. Wherever this emergency led, they were running out of time to address it. Hyun-woo, he called out. You said the electromagnetic interference is blocking your abilities. But Bora, your people evolved on a world with electromagnetic storms. Right. You should be able to filter that interference. Bora's form brightened with understanding. Yes, I can create a quantum field that will stabilize the electromagnetic environment. Within minutes, she had generated a bubble of calm round Hyun-woo, allowing his natural electromagnetic sensors to function properly. He immediately began scanning the facility's systems with renewed clarity. The primary life support hub is in Section 7. He reported multiple failures, but they are cascading from a single control node. Yunji, Daehyun continued, your people are calculating evacuation routes. But what if instead you calculated repair routes? The fastest way to fix the problem, instead of running from it. The silver-haired woman's eyes glowed brighter as she shifted her computational focus. Repair route identified. But it requires accessing maintenance shafts that were not designed for most of our species. Then we adapt. Daehyun said simply, who can fit through tight spaces. The water-like being, whose name translated as Sunmin, flowed forward. My species can compress our forms to navigate narrow passages, but I cannot manipulate solid matter while in liquid state. That's why we work in pairs, Daehyun explained, pulling out the emergency toolkit they'd been provided. Sungmin gets through the maintenance shafts and tells us exactly what needs to be fixed. Hyun-woo guides him using electromagnetic sensors. Bora interfaces with the control systems once we reach them. For the next hour, the diverse team worked with a precision that amazed even Daehyun. Instead of each species focusing on their own survival, they had become a single organism with multiple specialized parts. Sunmin flowed through passages to narrow for anyone else, while Hyun-woo's electromagnetic sensors guided him like a living GPS system. When they reached the central control hub, they found something remarkable. The facility's safety systems hadn't just failed. They had been deliberately disabled to create the emergency scenario. But the team's cooperative response had identified weaknesses in the facility's design that no single species would have discovered. The quantum processing cores are isolated from manual override systems, Bora observed. If a real cascade failure occurred, there would be no way to stop it. And the electromagnetic shielding creates blind spots, Hyun-woo added. My people's sensors could detect problems early, but only if we can position ourselves correctly, working together. They didn't just restore the facility's life support. They redesigned the entire emergency response system. Yunji's mathematical models created optimal positioning for electromagnetic sensors. Bora's quantum interfaces provided multiple backup control pathways. Some men's unique mobility allowed for a rapid assessment of areas other species couldn't reach. As the alarms finally fell silent and normal lighting returned, a figure emerged from what had appeared to be a sealed observation deck. Taijin, the facility commander, was an elderly human with kind eyes and a smile that suggested he'd seen something extraordinary in 50 years of administering these evaluations, he said. Approaching the exhausted but triumphant team, I have watched 12 different species face this same crisis scenario. Each time, they reverted to their basic survival instincts and abandoned cooperation in favor of self-preservation. He gestured toward the displays showing their redesigned safety systems. Not only did you maintain your cooperative bonds under extreme stress, but you used the crisis as an opportunity to improve our entire facility. You've revolutionized our understanding of multi-species emergency response. Daehyun wiped sweat from his forehead, still processing what they'd accomplished. So we passed. Taijin's smile widened. Mr. Washington, you didn't just pass. You've shown us that humanity possesses something we've been searching for across the galaxy. The ability to transform a group of individuals into something greater than the sum of their parts. Round him, his alien teammates were glowing, flickering, calculating, and flowing with what he was beginning to recognize as expressions of joy and accomplishment. They had become more than representatives of their species. They had become a team. 6 months had passed since the underground facility. But Daehyun Washington still woke up every morning in the same beat-up trailer he'd called home for the past 3 years. The difference was everything round it had changed completely. Where the old basketball court used to be, a magnificent structure now rose into the desert sky. The Earth Confederation Technical Institute looked like something from a dream. Its walls made of the same flowing silver material as Minho's original spacecraft. The building seemed to shift and pulse within a light, and sections of it actually floated above the ground, defying gravity in ways that still made Daehyun's head spin. Morning, Ambassador called out Mrs. Rodriguez from her trailer steps. She was wearing what looked like a regular house dress, but Daehyun knew it was actually woven from Arcturian smart fabric that could regulate temperature and even provide basic medical monitoring. The Confederation had insisted on upgrading everyone's living conditions, even if they chose to stay in the trailer park. Just Daehyun. Mrs. He replied, stepping out with his coffee mug. How's Miguel doing with his studies? That boy is building robots now. She laughed, shaking her head in amazement. Actual robots that help him with his homework. I don't understand half of what he tells me. But his grades are better than they've ever been. Down the street, Daehyun could see exactly what she meant. 15-year-old Miguel was in his front yard working on what appeared to be a small metallic creature about the size of a cat. The robot was helping him assemble some kind of device that glowed with soft blue light. It's a quantum calculator, Miguel called out. Having noticed Daehyun watching, Hyun-woo taught me how to build it last week. Watch this. The teenager spoke a mathematical equation in what sounded like musical tones. And the robot responded by projecting holographic numbers into the air, solving complex calculations in seconds. Incredible, Daehyun muttered, still getting used to seeing advanced alien technology mixed with everyday trailer park life. He walked toward the institute, passing the community garden that had become the unofficial meeting place for humans and aliens alike. Bora was there, her crystalline form glowing gently as she helped Mrs. Patterson understand how Confederation plants could grow in desert soil with minimal water. The elderly woman was fascinated by the way the alien crops seemed to communicate with each other through underground root networks. They're like a big family, Mrs. Patterson was saying, her weathered hands carefully tending to shoots that sparkled with their own inner light. They share water and nutrients, and when one plant gets sick, the others help heal it. Near the garden center, a group of children were playing a game that would have been impossible 6 months ago. Human kids were teamed up with young Arcturians, their blue skin shimmering as they used their electromagnetic sensors to play an advanced version of hide-and-seek. The alien children could sense the electrical fields generated by human nervous systems, while the human kids used their creativity to find unexpected hiding spots. The future generation adapts so quickly. Came a familiar musical voice behind Day-Hyan. He turned to see Hyan Wu approaching, his tall frame moving with that characteristic fluid grace. The Arcturian had become a regular fixture in the trailer park, serving as one of the primary instructors at the Institute. Kids don't have the same barriers we adults do, Day-Hyan replied. They see a friend with blue skin who can sense magnetic fields. And they think, cool. What can we do with that? Instead of that's impossible. They walked together toward the Institute's main entrance, which recognized Day-Hyan's biosignature and opened with a soft chime inside. The building was even more impressive. The walls seemed to be alive, displaying real-time information from across the galaxy. Students and researchers from a dozen different worlds worked together in laboratories that defied every law of physics Day-Hyan had once believed in. In one section, Yunji was teaching a group of human engineers how to work with programmable matter. The silver-haired Tausician was demonstrating how metal could be convinced to reshape itself through precise electromagnetic frequencies. Her human students watched in amazement as she turned a simple steel bar into a complex tool. Just by singing to it in mathematical harmonies, the applications are endless. Yunji was explaining. Your spacecraft will be able to repair themselves. Your buildings will adapt to weather conditions, and your medical devices will customize themselves for each patient in another lab. Bora had interfaced directly with a quantum computer the size of a refrigerator, her crystalline form pulsing with data streams round her. Graduate students were learning to think in the mathematical languages that her species had developed over millennia. The quantum realm operates on probability and potential, her translated voice explained. Your computers process information linearly, but quantum systems process all possibilities simultaneously. It's like the difference between walking through a maze and seeing the entire maze from above. Hyan made his way to his office, still marveling at the title on his door, Ambassador Day-Hyan Washington, Human Confederation Liaison. The office itself was a mixture of human comfort and alien efficiency. His old reclining chair sat next to a workstation that could connect him to any world in the Confederation. He was reviewing reports from other integration projects when Yonseo knocked on his open door. The Confederation's cultural attaché was a graceful being whose species had evolved on a world with variable gravity, giving her the ability to adjust her density at will. "Good morning, Ambassador," she said, her voice carrying the slight echo that came from her species' unique vocal structures. "I have the daily reports from the integration sites." She gestured toward the window, where they could see the transformed trailer park stretching out below them. "The success here has exceeded all projections. Other worlds are requesting similar programs." "That's great news," Day-Hyan replied. But Yonseo seemed to have something else on her mind. "There is one question that keeps coming up in the Confederation Council meetings," she continued. "They understand the scientific and educational benefits of this location, but they're curious about your personal choice to remain here." She gestured out the window at the gleaming Institute surrounded by old mobile homes and beat-up cars. "You could have any residence on any world in the Confederation. Palaces that float among the clouds, cities beneath alien oceans, research stations orbiting binary stars. Why choose to stay in Trailer 47? Day-Hyan smiled and joined her at the window below them. The afternoon shift change was happening. Human workers were heading home, while Arcturian researchers, who were more active during the cooler evening hours, were arriving for their duties. In the community garden, an elderly man was showing a group of young Talcetians how to grow earth tomatoes, while nearby, a Confederation engineer was helping a local teenager repair his motorcycle using techniques that incorporated both human mechanical knowledge and alien material science. "You see that?" Deihan asked, pointing to the scene below, Mrs. Patterson sharing her gardening wisdom with beings from a world 300 light-years away. Miguel teaching quantum mechanics to his little sister. Old Pete over there learning to repair hoverbikes from a species that's been traveling between stars for 1,000 years. He paused, watching a small group of human children playing with what appeared to be a baby Arcturian, their laughter mixing with the musical tones of alien joy. "This is where it all started," he continued, "not in some fancy laboratory or government facility, but right here, with one person helping another person who was stranded on the side of the road. No questions asked, no payment expected, just simple human decency." Yanseo nodded slowly, her expression showing the kind of understanding that crossed species barriers. "The Confederation has a lot of impressive technology," Deihan said, "but what they really needed was to remember that no matter how advanced we become, the most important thing is still people taking care of each other." As the sun set over the desert, the Institute's walls began to glow more brightly, and the floating sections of the building shifted into their evening configuration. But down in the trailer park, porch lights were coming on, families were gathering for dinner, and neighbors were checking on each other just like they always had. In the Institute's museum, the small silver disc that Minho had given him sat in a place of honor, displayed under soft lighting with a simple plaque that read, "Where humanity's journey to the stars began." But Deihan knew the real monument wasn't the disc or the Institute or even the transformed trailer park. It was the proof that kindness, cooperation, and the willingness to help a stranger could literally change the galaxy. The end.